You can choose to stay or leave. No one is forcing you.
Picture a blistering Texas dusk in 1871, where Eliza Crowley, a woman cast aside for her barren womb, stood trembling as her husband ushered a new wife into their home, shoving Eliza out before the sun dipped below the horizon. Sold by her own kin to settle a debt, she faced a Comanche leader's piercing gaze, not as a captive, but as a soul offered a choice. Could a broken woman, discarded like ash, find home among strangers who'd lost as much as she had? This tale's ending has moved millions to tears, but how does a single word from a child's lips redefine a family? Subscribe, share your city, and stay for the moment. A hilltop grave whispers truths no one expected. You'll wonder, what did she choose under that endless sky? The sun bled orange over Cross Hollow, Texas in 1871, painting the cracked earth like a dying fire. Eliza Crowley stood in the market square, her boots scuffed, her cotton dress clinging to her sweat-soaked skin. The air stank of manure and desperation. Around her, townsfolk buzzed, men in dust-caked hats, women clutching baskets, children darting like flies. Her father, Barnes, a man whose pride had withered with his fields, shoved her forward. "Step up, girl," he growled, his voice rough as gravel. "Healthy, works hard, just no good for heirs." Laughter rippled through the crowd, sharp as a blade. Eliza's cheeks burned, not from the heat, but from shame that felt heavier than the iron chains on the blacksmith's stall. 2 years ago, she'd been Eliza Jennings, wife to Tom, a cattleman with a laugh like thunder. She'd prayed over bitter herbs, endured the midwife's probing hands, and knelt nightly for a child that never came. Tom's mother spat at her feet, calling her a dry well. Then, one spring dawn, Tom brought home a new wife, Lila, 18, all smirks and swaying hips. By noon, Eliza was out, her belongings tossed into the dirt before the sun sank. Now, her parents, drowning in land debt, offered her to settle a score with the Comanche. No contract, no ceremony, just a handshake in the dust. "Half a steer's price," Barnes barked, waving at the crowd. "She cooks, sews, and doesn't talk much." Eliza's eyes stung, but she kept them fixed on a crooked fence post, refusing to meet the jeers. Whispers slithered. Barren. Useless. Cursed. A man in a stained vest snorted. "What's a woman worth if she can't breed?" Eliza's fists clenched, nails biting her palms. She was 24, still whole, yet they priced her like a lame horse. Then silence fell, heavy as a storm cloud. Bootsteps crunched, deliberate, parting the crowd. Tʉhʉya, the Comanche leader, stepped into the square. Tall, broad-shouldered, his buckskin tunic was stained with earth, his black hair braided tight. His face, weathered by loss and war, held no cruelty, just a quiet weight. He'd lost his wife to a cavalry raid, left with 2 children of his own and 2 orphans he'd taken in. The townsfolk called him savage, but his eyes, dark as a moonless night, studied Eliza like she was more than a bargain. Barnes raised an eyebrow. "You want her, Chief? She's no trouble, but no refunds." Tʉhʉya didn't flinch. He reached into a leather pouch, coins clinking as he dropped them on a barrel. No words, no barter, just enough to hush the crowd. Eliza's breath caught. Was this salvation or a new cage? Tʉhʉya turned, his moccasins silent on the dirt, and walked toward a wagon hitched outside the saloon. He didn't look back, but his silence said, "Follow, or don't." Her father nudged her, hard. "Go on, girl. You're his now." Eliza grabbed her satchel, holding only a comb, a faded shawl, and a locket with her mother's face, and stepped forward. The crowd's eyes bored into her, but she kept her chin up, each step kicking up dust like a small rebellion. At the wagon, Tʉhʉya waited, his hand steady on the reins. He handed her a canteen, the tin warm from the sun. "Long road," he said, his English slow, learned from years of tense trades. She climbed up, the wood creaking under her weight, and drank. The water tasted of metal and uncertainty. They rolled out of Cross Hollow, the town shrinking behind them. Eliza glanced at Tʉhʉya. His face was unreadable, etched by sun and sorrow. Maybe 30, maybe older. No ring, just scars on his knuckles and a knife at his belt. "Why me?" she whispered, barely audible over the creak of wheels. He kept his eyes on the horizon, where the plains stretched endlessly and unforgiving. "4 kids," he said, voice low. "No, mother. No time for white man's courtship." Her heart stuttered. A governess, then? A servant? She didn't ask. The wagon rocked over ruts, and the silence grew thick, broken only by the wind hissing through dry grass. As they passed the town's edge, a rider galloped up. Captain Harlan, U.S. Cavalry, his blue coat pristine against the dusty trail. He'd been there when Tom cast her out. His sneer burned into her memory. "A white woman handed to savages?" he spat, reining his horse. "This is proof of their barbarism. I'll have her back, or I'll burn every camp from here to the Red River." Tʉhʉya's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Harlan's eyes locked on Eliza, cold as steel. "You're a disgrace, girl. This ain't over." He spurred his horse and rode off, dust choking the air. Eliza's hands trembled, the canteen slipping in her grip. She wasn't just sold. She was a spark in a powder keg, caught between a town that despised her and a people she didn't know. The wagon rolled on, toward a horizon jagged with hills. What waited there? A man who'd paid for her, children who might hate her, and a cavalry captain ready to light a war. She clutched the locket, her mother's face cold against her palm, and wondered if freedom was just another word for surviving. The wagon's wheels groaned as they rolled toward a jagged horizon, Eliza Crowley clutching her locket, its cold metal a faint anchor against the unknown. The Texas plains of 1871 stretched vast and merciless, dry grass hissing under a wind that carried no promises. Tʉhʉya's silence beside her was a wall, not cruel, but unyielding, his hand steady on the reins. As Cross Hollow faded to a speck, Eliza's mind churned. Was she trading one prison for another, or was this the start of something she couldn't yet name? The Comanche camp emerged at dusk, a cluster of hide tents huddled by a thin creek, its water glinting like a dull knife. Smoke curled from a central fire, mingling with the scent of sage and roasted mesquite. Horses snorted, tethered to stakes, their eyes catching the last light. Eliza stepped down, her boots sinking into earth, soft as ash. 4 children watched from the shadows. Kai, 12, with a hunter's squint. Sora, 9, clutching a woven basket. Nita, 7, her face streaked with dirt. And little Crow, barely 4, peeking from behind Sora's skirt. Their stares weren't hostile, but they cut, sizing her up like a stray dog wandered too far from home. Tʉhʉya spoke to them in Comanche, his voice low, then turned to Eliza. "They know you're here. No one will shame you." He pointed to a tent, its flap swaying. "Sleep there. Fire's for cooking, not staring." She nodded, her throat tight, and ducked inside. The tent smelled of leather and earth, a buffalo hide bedroll her only comfort. Outside, the camp hummed. Soft voices, a dog's yap, the crackle of burning wood. Eliza lay awake, the locket pressed to her chest, her mind replaying Harlan's threat. Burn every camp. She was no savior, just a woman no one wanted. Now a guest among people she'd been taught to fear. Dawn broke sharply, the sun slicing through the tent's seams. Eliza emerged to find Kai splitting wood, his axe bites precise. Sora knelt by the creek, scrubbing hides. Nita and Little Crow chased a grasshopper, their giggles brittle but alive. Tʉhʉya was gone, off to scout, leaving Eliza to navigate alone. She approached the fire, where an old woman, White Owl, tended a pot of corn mush. "Eat," White Owl said, her English clipped, handing her a wooden bowl. The mush was bland, sticking to Eliza's throat, but she swallowed, aware of every eye on her. She tried to help, grinding corn with a stone pestle, but her hands fumbled, the grain spilling. Kai snorted, not cruelly, just unimpressed. "White women don't know work," he muttered, loud enough to sting. Eliza's jaw clenched, but she kept grinding, her palms blistering. By noon, she attempted to mend a torn hide, her needle slipping, drawing blood. Nita giggled, then covered her mouth, eyes wide. Eliza forced a smile, but inside she burned. Useless here, just as in Cross Hollow. Days blurred into a rhythm of labor and silence. Eliza learned to stoke the fire, her fingers blackened by ash. She watched Sora weave grass into mats, mimicking her movements, earning a nod when she got it right. But nights were harder. The children's dreams were loud. Nita's whimpers, Kai's muttered curses, memories of raids and blood. Eliza sat by the fire, unable to sleep, her own nightmares clawing. Tom's new wife laughing, her mother's cold goodbye. One night, she snapped, kicking a log into the flames, sparks flying like accusations. "I don't belong here," she hissed, her voice breaking. Little Crow, awake, stared, then toddled to her, offering a pebble. She froze, the small gift heavy in her hand. A week in, Little Crow fell ill, his small body hot as a coal. White Owl brewed sage tea, but his fever climbed. Eliza, remembering a midwife's trick, soaked a cloth in creek water and pressed it to his forehead. She sat through the night, whispering stories of Texas stars to keep him calm. By dawn, his fever broke, and he smiled, weak but real. Sora, watching, slipped a braided grass bracelet onto Eliza's wrist. "For Crow," she said, then turned away. Eliza's chest tightened. Not trust, not yet, but a crack in the wall. Then hoofbeats shattered the morning. A Comanche scout galloped in, shouting that cavalry riders had been spotted near the Red River. Tʉhʉya returned, his face grim. "Harlan's men," he said, meeting Eliza's eyes. "They say you're their reason." The camp stilled, the children's faces tight with fear. Kai gripped his knife, glaring at Eliza. "She brings trouble," he spat. Eliza's heart sank. The bracelet suddenly felt heavy. She wasn't just a stranger. She was a threat, her presence pulling death closer. As Tʉhʉya called a council, she stood alone by the creek, the pebble still in her pocket, wondering if she'd ever find a place that didn't break her. The creek's murmur was all Eliza Crowley had as she stood alone, the pebble from Little Crow heavy in her pocket, Kai's accusation, she brings trouble, cutting deeper than the Texas wind. The Comanche camp, fragile under the 1871 stars, braced for Captain Harlan's wrath, and Eliza, the white woman who didn't belong, felt the weight of every glance. As Tʉhʉya's council fire burned low, she turned from the water, her boots crunching on dry grass, and slipped into the shadows of her tent, wondering if dawn would bring war or just another day of proving herself. Night fell like a slammed door, the camp's quiet shattered by a distant rumble, hoofbeats, too many, too fast. A scout's shout pierced the air. "Cavalry!" Eliza bolted upright, her heart hammering. Outside, chaos erupted. Mothers snatched children, warriors grabbed bows, horses screamed as flames licked the horizon. Captain Harlan's men, torches blazing, swept through the camp like a wildfire. Tʉhʉya, silhouette sharp against the glow, barked orders in Comanche, his knife glinting. Eliza stumbled from her tent, the air thick with smoke and the stench of burning hide. Memories clawed at her. A fire years ago. Her unborn child lost. Her body left in ashes while Tom turned away. She froze, the past choking her as a tent collapsed in sparks. Little Crow's cry snapped her back. The boy, barely visible through the haze, limped near a fallen pole, blood streaking his leg from a gash torn by jagged stone. Eliza ran, dodging a rearing horse, and scooped him up, his small frame trembling against her chest. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice steady despite the panic. Kai appeared, bow in hand, his eyes fierce but scared. "Keja Tieng!" he yelled. The sacred pass, a narrow ravine only the elders knew. Sora and Nita clung to him, faces pale. Eliza nodded, clutching Little Crow, and followed Kai's lead as Tʉhʉya rallied warriors to hold the line. The pass was a slit in the earth, its walls jagged as broken teeth, the path slick with dust. Eliza's boot slipped, her arms burning from Little Crow's weight, but she pressed on, Sora's hand gripping her skirt, Nita's sobs echoing. Behind them, Tʉhʉya fought, a shadow against the flames, an arrow slicing his shoulder. He didn't falter, his shouts urging them forward. The camp's glow faded, replaced by the pass's cold dark, the air sharp with moss and stone. Eliza's lungs burned, her mind racing. This is my fault. Harlan wants me. But Little Crow's shallow breaths kept her moving, each step a defiance of the fire she'd once failed to outrun. They reached a hollow, hidden by overhanging rock. Kai crouched, scanning the dark, while Sora pressed against Nita, whispering Comanche prayers. Eliza set Little Crow down, her hands shaking as she tore a strip from her shawl. The gash was deep, blood soaking the cloth, but she worked fast, remembering a midwife's lessons and Sora's herb tricks. She crushed sage from her pocket, smearing it over the wound, and bound it tight. Little Crow whimpered, then gripped her finger, his eyes fluttering. "Ma," he mumbled, half-conscious. Eliza's breath caught, the word a knife and a bomb. Sora, watching, said nothing, but her gaze softened, a silent acknowledgement. Tʉhʉya staggered in, blood dripping from his shoulder, his face etched with pain but resolute. "They're gone," he rasped, "camp's ash." The words landed like a stone. Eliza looked at the children, their faces smudged with soot, and felt the weight of their loss. If this story of survival and unexpected bonds grips you, hit subscribe to hear more tales of grit and heart from the frontier. It's your support that keeps these stories alive. Dawn crept in, gray and merciless, revealing the pass's scars. The camp was gone, its tents charred bones, the creek choked with debris. Kai's fists clenched, his glare fixed on Eliza. "You brought this," he said, voice low but venomous. Tʉhʉya silenced him with a look, but the truth stung. Eliza was the spark, her presence the cavalry's excuse. She knelt by Little Crow, checking his wound, her hand steady despite the guilt. The boy stirred, his small hand finding hers. "Stay, Ma," he whispered, clear this time. Tʉhʉya, binding his own wound, met her eyes, his expression unreadable but heavy. The children huddled close, their fear louder than words. Eliza's mind churned. Run, and they're safe. Stay, and I'm their curse. The pass felt like a grave, its walls closing in, and for the first time, she wondered if saving Little Crow was just delaying the inevitable. As Tʉhʉya led them toward what remained of their home, Eliza trailed behind, the word Ma echoing, both a tether and a chain. The word Ma lingered in Eliza Crowley's ears, a fragile thread tying her to Little Crow's small hand, as Tʉhʉya led them from the sacred pass, the dawn of 1871, Texas, gray and unforgiving. The Comanche camp's ruins lay ahead, charred hides, scattered pots, the creek muddied with ash. Eliza trailed behind, her boots heavy, the weight of Kai's blame and her own guilt pressing like a stone on her chest. She'd saved a child, but at what cost? As they stepped into the wreckage, the wind carried a new sound. Hoofbeats, not fleeing, but approaching, steady as a drumbeat of doom. The camp survivors gathered, salvaging what they could. Scorched blankets, a cracked boo, a single iron pot. Tʉhʉya, his shoulder bandaged, directed the effort, his voice calm but eyes sharp, scanning the horizon. Eliza worked beside Sora, tying torn hides into makeshift shelters, her hands raw from rope burns. Nita hummed a shaky tune, staying close, while Little Crow, weak but awake, clung to a stick, mimicking Kai's spear thrusts. The boy's trust was a knife in Eliza's gut. She was no mother, just a spark that had burned their home to cinders. Kai avoided her, his silence louder than any curse. By noon, the hoofbeats grew clear. Captain Harlan rode in, flanked by 6 cavalrymen, their blue coats stark against the ruined camp. Behind them, Eliza's parents, Barnes and his wife, trailed on a rickety cart, faces drawn with shame or fear. Harlan dismounted, his spurs jangling, a smirk curling under his mustache. "Eliza Crowley," he called, voice smooth as oil. "You've caused enough trouble. Come back to Cross Hollow, and we'll call this a misunderstanding." The crowd stilled, Comanche hands tightening on knives, children edging behind elders. Eliza's stomach churned. His offer was a trap, not mercy. Barnes climbed down, hat crumpled in his hands. "Eliza, girl," he pleaded. "We'll take you in. You'll be forgiven. Don't make this worse." His wife nodded, eyes darting to Harlan, but said nothing. Eliza stood frozen, the grass bracelet from Sora cutting into her wrist. Forgiven? For what? Failing to birth a child or surviving their betrayal? She glanced at Tʉhʉya, his face unreadable, then at the children. Little Crow's stick dropped, his eyes wide. Kai's glare burned, but Sora stepped closer, her small hand brushing Eliza's. Harlan's tone hardened. "You're a white woman, not a savage's property. Refuse, and this camp sees no peace." His men shifted, hands on sabers, horses snorting. Tʉhʉya stepped forward, blood seeping through his bandage, but Eliza raised a hand, stopping him. Her voice, when it came, was low, trembling but clear. "I'm no one's property. Not yours, not theirs." She pointed to her parents. "You sold me once. You don't get to claim me now." Barnes flinched, his wife looking away. Harlan's smirk faded, his eyes narrowing. The air grew thick, the creek's trickle loud in the silence. Eliza's mind raced. Leaving might spare the camp, but it meant returning to a town that spat on her, a family that bartered her like cattle. Staying meant more blood, more loss, and Kai's hate was proof she'd never truly belong. She thought of Little Crow's maw, of Sora's bracelet, of Tʉhʉya's quiet promise. "No one will shame you." Her heart pounded, the choice a blade at her throat. "I go," she whispered, testing the words. "And you leave them be?" Harlan nodded, too quick, his eyes gleaming with triumph. Kai snorted, turning away. Nita's hum stopped, her face crumpling. Sora grabbed Eliza's sleeve, shaking her head. Little Crow toddled forward, stick raised like a shield. "No, Ma," he said, voice small but fierce. Eliza knelt, her eyes stinging, and cupped his cheek. "I'd bring you harm," she murmured, the words choking her. Tʉhʉya watched, his silence heavy, not commanding but waiting, giving her the space to choose. The camp felt like a held breath, the plains vast and empty beyond. Eliza stood, facing Harlan, her hands balled into fists. "Give me tonight," she said, voice steadier. "I'll answer at dawn." Harlan hesitated, then nodded, mounting his horse. "Dawn, or we ride through." He led his men out, Eliza's parents following, their cart creaking like a coward's retreat. The camp exhaled, but tension lingered. Eliza turned to the creek, avoiding the children's eyes, her reflection warped in the muddy water. She'd asked for time, but time was a thief. It stole clarity, not gave it. Was she saving them or abandoning them? The bracelet burned her wrist. Little Crow's word a chain she couldn't break. As night fell, the camp's fires flickered, and Eliza sat alone, the Texas stars above offering no answers, only the weight of a choice that would define her. The Texas stars hung cold and distant above the shattered Comanche camp, offering Eliza Crowley no answers as she sat by the creek, the weight of her choice heavier than the night itself. Little Crow's maw echoed in her bones, Sora's bracelet a quiet burn on her wrist. But the dawn of 1871 loomed with Captain Harlan's ultimatum: return to Cross Hollow or doom the camp to war. She traced the muddy water's edge with her boot, the reflection of a woman she barely knew staring back, and stood as the first light bled across the plains, ready to face the cost of belonging. The camp stirred, fires rekindled, their smoke thin against the morning chill. Eliza packed her satchel, comb, shawl, locket, each item a tether to a life that no longer fit. Tʉhʉya sharpened a knife by the creek, his shoulder stiff from the wound, his silence giving her space. The children worked nearby, salvaging scraps from the ruins. Kai hauled wood, his back turned, still angry. Nita wove grass with trembling fingers, her eyes darting to Eliza. Sora approached, holding out a small clay bowl, chipped but whole. "For you," she said, voice soft. Eliza took it, her throat tight, the gift heavier than it should be. Hoofbeats broke the quiet, Harlan's cavalry cresting the ridge, their sabers glinting like fangs. He rode at the front, his coat pristine, Eliza's parents trailing in their creaking cart. The camp froze, warriors gripping spears, elders shielding children. Eliza stepped forward, satchel slung over her shoulder, the bowl in her hands. Harlan dismounted, his smirk sharp. "Time's up, Crowley. Come quietly, or this gets bloody." Her parents climbed down, Barnes muttering. "Do right, girl," his wife silent, eyes on the dirt. Eliza's pulse thundered, the camp's eyes on her, Tʉhʉya's steady gaze a quiet anchor. She looked at Little Crow, leaning on a stick, his face fierce despite the bandage on his leg. "Ma, don't," he said, stepping closer. Kai dropped his wood, fists clenched, but didn't speak. Sora's hand found Nita's, their trust a weight Eliza couldn't shake. She thought of Cross Hollow, its sneers, its chains, the husband who'd cast her out before sunset. Then she saw the camp's ashes, the children's fear, Tʉhʉya's blood, all tied to her presence. Her voice, when it came, was low, cracked, but firm. "If I go, you swear no harm comes here?" Harlan nodded, too eager, his eyes glinting with victory. But Little Crow lunged, grabbing her skirt. "You're ours!" he shouted, his voice cutting the air. Sora stepped up, chin high. "You taught me to weave better," she said, simple but raw. Nita, tears falling, ran to hug her. Kai, silent, met her eyes. His anger softened, not gone, but shifted. Tʉhʉya moved closer, his knife sheathed, his voice calm. "You owe no one your life. Choose what you carry." Eliza's hand shook, the bowl slipping, but she caught it, its rough edge grounding her. She turned to Harlan, her parents, and the life she'd been sold into. "I'm not your prize," she said, louder now, each word a stone. "I'm home here, with them. Ride away." Harlan's face twisted, hand on his saber, but the camp closed ranks, warriors, elders, children, a wall of defiance. Tʉhʉya's hand rested on his knife, not drawn but ready. Harlan's men shifted, uneasy, their horses pawing the earth. He spat. "You'll regret this," but mounted. signaling retreat. The cavalry rode out, Barnes and his wife following, their carts rattle fading into the plain's vast quiet. The camp exhaled, but Eliza stood still, the bowl heavy, her choice a fire in her chest. Years passed, and the Comanche pushed north by treaties and guns, their camps ever moving. Eliza stayed, not as wife or mother-in-law, but as ma to 4 children who grew strong through hunger and loss. She wove with Sora, hunted with Kai, sang to Nita, and carried little Crow when his leg ached. Tʉhʉya taught her the plain's secrets: tracks, stars, resilience. In 1880, a bitter winter took her, fever claiming what no cavalry could. Tʉhʉya buried her on a high hill, the grass green despite the frost. With his old knife, he carved on a cedar plank. She bore no child, but birthed a family no enemy could steal. The camp moved on, but the hill stayed, grass spreading like a promise. Travelers passing the ridge spoke of a woman who chose love over chains, her name whispered in the wind that swept the Texas plains, where the earth remembered what no one else dared. Eliza's choice on that Texas hill, defying a world that sold her to forge a family from ashes, still echoes. What do you think? Was her stand worth the cost, or would you have walked away? Drop your thoughts below. Your voice keeps these stories alive. I'm grateful for every moment you spent riding through this dusty tale with me. Let's meet again, where the plains whisper new legends. If you're hungry for more stories of grit and heart, tell me what moves you. Another frontier saga awaits.